July 7, 1985. A winter morning dawned with an exceptionally clear sky over the Serra da Canastra, a mountain range in the southwest of Minas Gerais, Brazil. The temperature hovered between 12 and 16 degrees Celsius, with moderate winds of 15 kilometers per hour, perfect conditions for hiking the famous rock formations of the national park, which had been established just 13 years prior. The region, known for being the birthplace of the São Francisco River and for its impressive waterfalls, including the monumental 186-meter Casca d'Anta Falls, attracted both tourists and researchers alike. On that particular morning, Helena Marques Vieira, a 32-year-old psychologist from Belo Horizonte, began what was supposed to be just another day of her solo trip through the park. Helena had planned this journey for months, describing it to colleagues and family as a journey of self-discovery. A graduate of the Federal University of Minas Gerais, she had built a solid reputation at her private practice, where she specialized in treating trauma. Friends described her as methodical, cautious, and impeccably organized, traits that seemed to contradict the decision to undertake such a challenging journey alone. Helena was always very independent but also very responsible. Her sister, Cecilia Vieira, stated in a deposition to the authorities, she was not the type to take risks without preparation. She had studied maps, spoken with local guides, and carried the proper equipment. National Park records confirmed that Helena signed the visitor log at 7:45 a.m. that Thursday, indicating her plan to hike the canyon trail, a route of moderate difficulty that, under normal conditions, would take approximately 6 hours to complete. The last confirmed visual record of Helena was at 9:20 a.m., when she was photographed by another visitor admiring the view from the Mirante dos Canários, a lookout point about 4 kilometers from the trailhead. From that moment on, Helena Marques Vieira vanished without a trace. Her absence was only noticed the following day, when she failed to return to the inn where she was staying in the small town of São Roque de Minas. Maria Conceição Santos, the owner of the Pousada Serra Azul, told authorities she found it strange when Helena didn't show up for dinner that night, but she wasn't immediately alarmed. "I thought she might have decided to extend her hike and stay in one of the shelters inside the park. It happens sometimes with tourists who are captivated by the sunset and prefer to spend the night up high," Maria explained. "I became truly worried when I noticed her bed hadn't been slept in and her personal belongings, including her documents and medication, were still in the room." At 10:15 a.m. on July 8th, Maria Conceição contacted the fire department in Passos, a city 70 kilometers away, and the National Park Administration. An initial search team was hastily assembled, comprising 3 firefighters, 2 local guides, and 4 park rangers. The first 24 hours of the search focused on the canyon trail and its adjacent areas, but yielded no sign of Helena. On July 9th, the search was intensified. Teams from the military police, volunteers from the local community, and search and rescue specialists from Belo Horizonte joined the effort. Military police helicopters scoured the region from above, while sniffer dogs were deployed on the trails. The weather, which had been favorable, began to turn as a cold front moved in. The temperature dropped to 8 degrees Celsius, and intermittent rain hampered the operations. The geographical conditions of the Serra da Canastra pose a considerable challenge for search operations, explained Lieutenant Roberto Campos, who led the initial efforts. "We have sheer rock faces, deep canyons, dense vegetation in certain areas, and many caves and crevices where a person could become trapped or hidden." After 7 days of intensive searching, covering an area of approximately 120 square kilometers, no significant trace of Helena was found. The only items recovered were a water bottle engraved with her initials, found near a fork off the main trail, and a red scarf that her family identified as hers. located about 600 meters from the main path, toward a more rugged area known as the Valley of the Canyons. Helena's last communication was an entry in her journal, dated the night before her disappearance. The page, later found in her room at the inn, contained a reflection on facing old fears and seeking answers in the highlands. This note, seemingly innocent at first glance, would take on new interpretations as the investigation progressed. If you want to follow more cases like this which stir society and reveal hidden truths, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an investigation. The formal investigation into the disappearance of Helena Marquez Vieira was opened on July 15, 1985, 1 week after she vanished, when authorities reclassified the case from a lost person to a disappearance under suspicious circumstances. This change came after a preliminary analysis of the evidence and interviews with people who had interacted with Helena in the days leading up to her disappearance. Detective Antonio Ferreira, from the Missing Persons Division in Belo Horizonte, took charge of the case. His first act was to order a meticulous search of Helena's room at the inn. Investigators found her journal, maps of the region with detailed annotations, and a sealed envelope addressed to her sister Cecilia, inscribed with the words, "Open only if I do not return." The contents of this letter, initially kept confidential by the authorities, revealed that Helena was investigating reports of unusual experiences in the Valley of the Canyons region. "There is something in this place that deeply intrigues me," Helena wrote. "The locals speak of strange lights, inexplicable sounds, and a sense of altered time in certain areas of the park. As a psychologist, I know that collective experiences can have cultural and psychological explanations. But I feel I need to experience it for myself to understand." This revelation opened a new line of inquiry. Detective Ferreira and his team began interviewing local residents about these alleged unusual experiences. Many were reluctant to speak, but some reported strange phenomena in the region, especially in an area known as Pedra Furada, or Hold Stone, located approximately 3 kilometers from where Helena's scarf was found. "My grandfather used to say that place was a doorway," recounted Jose Silveira, a 67-year-old farmer who had lived his entire life in the region. "I never quite understood what he meant by that, but we always avoided that area, especially on nights with a full moon." Curiously, the night before Helena's disappearance had been a full moon. Investigators also discovered that Helena had consulted with Professor Carlos Eduardo Mendes, a geologist from UFMG specializing in the rock formations of the Serra da Canastra, 3 weeks before her trip. In his testimony, Professor Mendes revealed that Helena had specifically asked about magnetic anomalies and unusual rock formations in the Valley of the Canyons. "I explained to her that there are indeed some magnetic anomalies in the region due to the mineral composition of the rocks, mainly quartz and magnetite," the professor stated, "but nothing that could cause the phenomena she described." I thought she was researching for an academic paper. While the investigation proceeded down this seemingly esoteric path, the forensic team focused on more tangible aspects. The analysis of the water bottle revealed only Helena's own fingerprints. The red scarf, however, contained, in addition to her prints, traces of pollen from a rare orchid species, Sophronites coccinea, which, according to consulting botanists, grew only in very specific and hard-to-reach areas of the park. This discovery prompted a new phase of the search, concentrating on areas where this orchid might be found. For 2 weeks, specialized teams explored caves, crevices, and rock faces using rappelling and caving equipment. No further trace of Helena was found. The timeline of Helena's last known movements was meticulously reconstructed. On the morning of her disappearance, she had breakfast at the inn at 6:30 a.m., briefly chatting with other guests about her plan to hike the canyon trail. At 7:15 a.m., she bought cereal bars and dried fruit at the local market. The owner, Sebastián Oliveira, recalled Helena mentioning a special place she wanted to find, based on old stories. At 7:45 a.m., she registered her entry into the park. At 9:20 a.m., she was photographed at the Mirante dos Canarios by a tourist couple from Sao Paulo. The photo, later analyzed, showed Helena smiling, seemingly at ease, wearing a blue backpack, beige hiking pants, and a long-sleeved red shirt, exactly the clothes described in her disappearance report. What happened next remains a matter of speculation. The initial theory of an accident, a fall from a cliff or into a ravine, lost credibility as the intensive searches revealed no body. The possibility of an attack by a wild animal was also deemed unlikely by experts given the absence of physical evidence like blood or torn clothing. The hypothesis of a crime began to gain more traction when investigators discovered that, 3 years earlier, another woman had disappeared under similar circumstances in the same region. Luisa Mendonça, a 28-year-old biologist, vanished in May 1982 during a botanical research expedition. Her body was never found, and the case was filed as a person lost in a natural environment. Investigators found no direct connections between Helena and Luisa, apart from the geographical coincidence. But the similarity of the cases, young professional women disappearing in the same region without leaving significant traces, raised suspicion. We cannot ignore the possibility that we are dealing with a predator who knows the region well and uses the natural environment to conceal his crime, stated Detective Vieira in an internal report dated September 1985. On the other hand, the complete lack of physical evidence makes this theory difficult to prove. Another line of investigation explored the possibility of a voluntary disappearance. Helena's personal and professional life was thoroughly examined. It was discovered that 2 months before her trip, she had ended a difficult relationship with a professional colleague and was facing an ethics complaint at the Regional Council of Psychology for allegedly crossing professional boundaries with a patient. Close friends, however, vehemently dismissed the possibility of her running away, describing Helena as someone who faced her problems head-on. In October 1985, after 3 months of intensive investigation with no conclusive results, the case began to go cold. The searches in the park were reduced to sporadic operations, and the dedicated investigation team was gradually reassigned to other cases. Helena's family, dissatisfied with the direction of the investigation, hired a private detective, Marcos Silveira, a former police officer with experience in missing persons cases. Silveira spent months investigating angles that he claimed the police had overlooked. "There is a pattern of silence in the local community that intrigues me," Silveira wrote in his preliminary report. "It's not just a reluctance to talk to authorities, which is common in isolated rural communities. It's something deeper, almost like a collective pact." Despite his efforts, Silveira also failed to make significant progress. His last line of inquiry, cut short when the family could no longer afford his fees, involved a local legend about the Guardians of the Serra, supposedly a group that protected ancient secrets hidden in the mountains. At the end of 1986, the case of Helena Marques Vieira was officially classified as unsolved, investigation suspended. For her family and close friends, the mystery would endure for much longer than anyone could have imagined. The years passed with no news of Helena Marques Vieira's disappearance. The 1980s gave way to the 1990s, and the case gradually faded from the headlines, remaining only as a tragic story told by tour guides in the Serra da Canastra to curious visitors. Cecilia Vieira, Helena's sister, never gave up her search for answers. Every year on the anniversary of the disappearance, She would travel to São Roque de Minas and walk part of the canyon trail, leaving flowers at the Mirante dos Canários, the last place her sister was definitively seen. In July 1995, during one of these visits, Cecilia met Pedro Oliveira, a young local guide who had started researching the region's disappearance cases on his own. Pedro, then 25, was the son of one of the park rangers who had participated in the original search for Helena. "My father was always haunted by this case," Pedro told Cecilia. "In the last years of his life, he passed away in 1993, he often mentioned that there was something wrong with those stones. I never understood exactly what he meant, but he knew this mountain range like the back of his hand." This casual conversation sparked a renewed interest in the case. Pedro and Cecilia began to re-examine the original reports, re-interviewing witnesses who were still alive and exploring areas of the park that, according to Pedro, many local guides instinctively avoided. In September 1995, their amateur investigation caught the attention of journalist Rafael Monteiro from the magazine Mysteries of Brazil, who published an extensive feature on the case. The article, titled "The Enigma of the Serra, the Disappearance No One Wants to Remember," included interviews with local residents who had never spoken publicly about the case before. One of these testimonies, from an elderly woman named Aparecida Costa, then 78, brought a shocking revelation. She claimed that on the morning of Helena's disappearance, she had seen the psychologist talking to an unknown man near the park entrance. "I never spoke up before because I was afraid," Dona Aparecida confessed. "That man wasn't from around here, tall, with graying hair, wearing city clothes. They were talking as if they already knew each other. When the police came asking questions, my husband told me to keep quiet, that we shouldn't get involved." This belated testimony officially reopened the case in November 1995. The civil police of Minas Gerais, now armed with investigative methods and technologies unimaginable a decade earlier, began a complete review of the evidence. A composite sketch of the man described by Dona Aparecida was widely circulated. Then, in March of 1996, a significant breakthrough occurred. Carlos Mendonça, the brother of Luisa Mendonça, the biologist who had vanished in 1982, recognized the man in the sketch. It was Dr. Victor Stein, a geologist who had worked briefly with his sister just before she disappeared. Authorities soon discovered that Victor Stein, an Argentine citizen, had worked as a consultant for mining companies in Brazil between 1980 and 1986. His immigration records showed he had left Brazil for good in December of 1985, just 5 months after Helena's disappearance. Attempts to locate him in Argentina revealed a dead end. He had passed away in 1994, the victim of a car accident. Just as the authorities were preparing to shelve the case once more due to the death of their primary suspect, another discovery forced the investigation to remain active. Stein's personal effects, obtained through international cooperation, revealed detailed maps of the Serra da Canastra, with specific markings in the region of the Vale dos Canyons. Even more intriguing, among his belongings was a notebook filled with entries about the unique properties of certain rock formations and references to temporal portals. Language strikingly similar to that found in Helena's own notes. "We are facing an extremely complex case," declared Delegate Cristina Mendez, who was in charge of the reopened investigation. "The evidence suggests that both Helena and Luisa may have been lured to this region by Stein, possibly as part of some unconventional research he was conducting." In June of 1996, specialized teams using modern ground-penetrating radar began to explore the areas marked on Stein's maps. They discovered several unmapped caves and a complex system of natural tunnels in a region known as Pedra Furada. Coincidentally, the same area local residents mentioned in their accounts of strange phenomena. The exploration of this cave system, perilous due to the instability of the rock formations, led to the discovery of an abandoned campsite approximately 800 meters inside the mountain. The site contained geological research equipment, some of it dated to 1985, and a field journal, partially deteriorated by moisture. Forensic analysis confirmed that some of the notes were in Helena's handwriting. The last legible entry, dated July 19, 1985, one day after her official disappearance, read simply, "The measurements confirm it. This place defies all known laws of physics. Victor was right about the temporal anomalies. Tomorrow, we will conduct the final test." This shocking discovery suggested that Helena had survived for at least a day after she was reported missing and was, apparently, involved in some kind of scientific experiment with Victor Stein. Yet, there was no human trace at the camp. No remains, no conclusive evidence of what might have happened to her or Stein during this experiment. On April 17, 2001, a training expedition of the Horizonte Scout Group from Belo Horizonte, consisting of 12 teenagers and 3 adult supervisors, was camping in the Serra da Canastra National Park. On the second day, one of the scouts, a 15-year-old named Gabriel Campos, strayed from the main group during a navigation exercise. He inadvertently discovered a narrow fissure in a rock formation near the area known as Pedra Furada. Driven by a curiosity typical of his age, Gabriel decided to explore the opening, which was just wide enough for a slender person to pass through. Equipped only with a simple flashlight, he advanced about 30 meters into a natural tunnel, which, to his surprise, widened into a subterranean chamber of considerable size. What Gabriel found in this chamber would forever change the course of the investigation into the disappearance of Helena Marques Vieira. "When my flashlight beam hit the back of the cave, I thought I was hallucinating," Gabriel later reported. "There was equipment scattered around like in a makeshift lab and what looked like a camping tent. But what made me run back was seeing a figure sitting against the cave wall." Terrified by his discovery, Gabriel rushed back to the scout camp and told the adult leaders what he had seen. Ricardo Menezes, a firefighter by profession and one of the supervisors, decided to personally verify the young scout's story, initially skeptical of the account. When he returned from his own exploration 2 hours later, Ricardo was visibly shaken. He immediately contacted the authorities via his radio communicator and ordered the scout group to break camp and leave the area. What Ricardo saw in the cave was later described in his official testimony as the most disturbing and inexplicable scene of his entire career. Inside the chamber, he had indeed found an improvised laboratory with scientific equipment, some modern and some clearly from the 1980s. There were notebooks, geological and magnetic measuring instruments, and several clocks arranged in a circle. In the center of this arrangement, a mummified human figure was seated leaning against the cave wall. The state of preservation was exceptional, owing to the cave's specific temperature and humidity. The figure wore clothing that precisely matched the description from Helena's missing person report: beige hiking pants and a red long-sleeved shirt. Beside the body, a blue backpack contained documents that definitively confirmed the identity. It was Helena Marques Vieira. The most disconcerting aspect, however, was not the discovery of the body itself, but its condition. Helena appeared to have died while sitting in an almost meditative posture, with no apparent signs of trauma or struggle. An open notebook rested in her lap, and her right hand still held a pen, as if she had been interrupted mid-sentence. The final entry in the notebook, dated July 21, 1985, 3 days after her official disappearance, contained an enigmatic observation. Day 3 of the experiment. The temporal distortions are more intense than we predicted. Every minute in here seems to correspond to hours out there, Victor has not returned from the last exploration of the North Tunnel. The instruments are giving impossible readings. The atomic clock marks 7 days since our entry, but my wristwatch shows only 72 hours. I'm beginning to feel the physical effects Victor described: shortness of breath, disorientation, flashes of memories that are not my own. I don't know if I can get out to deliver our findings. If anyone finds these notes, please do not repeat our mistake. Some doors should not be opened. The autopsy performed on Helena's body revealed even more intriguing results. Despite the excellent state of preservation, forensic pathologists could not determine a precise cause of death. There were no signs of physical trauma, poisoning, or any identifiable pathology. The official report concluded only that she had died of undetermined natural causes. More baffling still was the analysis of her body tissues, which revealed accelerated cellular aging, as if Helena's body had aged decades in just a few days. The specialists could offer no explanation for this phenomenon. The investigation of the subterranean laboratory brought other surprising revelations. The equipment included instruments for measuring magnetic fields, gravity, and radiation, many of which had been modified in unconventional ways. Further analysis of the notebooks revealed that Helena and Victor Stein believed they had discovered a spatio-temporal anomaly within the cave, a point where, according to their theories, time flowed differently relative to the outside world. The notes describe methodical experiments to document these supposed anomalies, explained Dr. Paulo Ribeiro, a physicist from the University of São Paulo who was invited to analyze the documents. While the premise may sound fantastic, their approach was surprisingly scientific. They were trying to apply rigorous methods to document something that, according to conventional physics, should be impossible. As for Victor Stein, his body was never found, despite extensive searches in the tunnels adjacent to the main chamber. Helena's notes suggest he ventured deeper into the cave system and never returned. Curiously, the official records of his death in Argentina in 1994 were reviewed, and it was discovered that the body from the accident was never formally identified by family members, only by documents found in the wrecked vehicle. The discovery of Helena's body and the underground lab generated intense speculation in the scientific community and among enthusiasts of unexplained phenomena. Theories ranged from mundane explanations like toxic natural gases causing hallucinations and death, to wild speculation about dimensional portals and warps in space-time. For Helena's family, the discovery brought long-awaited closure but also new questions. Cecilia Vieira, her sister, expressed mixed feelings during the funeral. Finally held in May of 2001, 16 years after the disappearance. Part of me is at peace to finally be able to give Helena a dignified burial, she declared. But another part will forever wonder what truly happened in that cave. Helena was a scientist at heart. Even as a psychologist, she wouldn't believe in anything without concrete evidence. Whatever she discovered in there was real enough to convince her. The case of Helena Marques Vieira was officially closed as a death by natural causes in an exploratory environment. However, a confidential addendum to the final report, signed by Delegate Cristina Mendez, noted, "There are aspects of this case that remain beyond our current capacity for explanation. I recommend that the specific area of Pedra Furada be permanently isolated from public access, not only for environmental preservation but due to potential unknown risks." Following this recommendation in 2002, the administration of the Serra da Canastra National Park designated the Pedra Furada region as an integral preservation area, completely prohibiting visitor access. Officially, the measure was justified by the presence of endangered endemic species and the geological fragility of the terrain. The equipment and documents found in the cave were sent for analysis to the National Institute for Space Research, where they remain to this day, classified as material of special scientific interest with restricted access. Gabriel Campos, the young scout whose curiosity led to the discovery that closed a 16-year-old mystery, went on to pursue a career in geology, inspired by his experience. Today, as a researcher, he continues to study the rock formations of the Serra da Canastra, seeking scientific explanations for the phenomena described in the notes of Helena and Victor. "I don't believe in dimensional portals or time travel in a fantastical sense," Gabriel stated in a recent interview. "But I do believe there are natural phenomena we don't yet fully understand." Helena and Victor may have stumbled upon something genuinely new to science, and they paid a high price for their curiosity. The case of Helena Marques Vieira remains one of Brazil's most intriguing solved mysteries. Although her body was found and a general cause of death was determined, the exact circumstances and the phenomena described in her notes continue to defy conventional explanation. For those familiar with the case, the Serra da Canastra was never seen the same way again. Visitors who walk its trails often report a peculiar feeling when passing near the isolated area of Pedra Furada, a sensation that local guides, with a mixture of respect and fear, describe simply as the whisper of time. 2 decades have passed since the discovery of Helena Marques Vieira's body in the mysterious cave of Pedra Furada. Her case, initially a common disappearance among the many that occur annually in Brazil's natural areas, has transformed into a cultural phenomenon that transcends the boundaries of criminal or scientific investigation. In 2005, the Institute of Psychology at the university where Helena had graduated established the Helena Vieira Prize for Research in Exceptional Psychological Phenomena, awarded annually to students investigating human experiences not well understood by traditional science. The initiative, initially controversial in more conservative academic circles, has gained respectability over the years, attracting serious researchers interested in the intersection of psychology, neuroscience, and anomalous experiences. Cecilia Vieira, who passed away in 2018, dedicated the final years of her life to creating the Helena Vieira Foundation, a non-governmental organization dedicated to 2 primary goals: supporting the families of missing persons and funding independent scientific research into the phenomena described in her sister's notes. "My sister was, above all, a scientist by nature," Cecilia declared in her last public speech. She would not want to see her name associated with fantastic theories without an empirical basis. What she discovered, whatever it was, deserves to be studied with scientific rigor, not sensationalism. The Pedra Furada area remains officially isolated from the public, with access permitted only to authorized researchers under strict safety conditions. In 2010, a joint expedition conducted extensive measurements in the cave where Helena was found, using high-precision equipment to detect any magnetic, gravitational, or radiative anomalies. The results, partially published in the prestigious scientific journal Nature Geoscience, confirmed the presence of an anomalous magnetic field in the cave, significantly stronger than expected for the local mineral composition. Even more intriguing, the researchers documented irregular fluctuations in this field, with patterns that do not correspond to any known geological phenomenon. "We are not claiming to have discovered a temporal anomaly, as suggested in the notes of Vieira and Stein," clarified Dr. Luciana Campos, the lead geophysicist on the study. "But we have identified a genuinely unusual phenomenon that warrants continued investigation. From a geophysical standpoint, something unique is happening in that cave." The case also inspired a wave of cultural productions. In 2008, the feature film The Physics of Time loosely based on the events, became an unexpected box office success in Brazil and was screened at international film festivals. In 2012, the TV Globo miniseries Anomaly, which reimagined the story in a contemporary setting, shattered viewership records. In the literary world, the book The Whispers of the Serra, the true story of Helena Vieira, by Rafael Montero, the same journalist whose reporting helped reopen the case in 1995, remained on the bestseller list for 38 consecutive weeks after its 2007 release. The work, which blends meticulous journalistic investigation with reflections on the limits of science, has since been translated into 12 languages. The impact of the case on the local community was equally profound and lasting. São Roque de Minas, the small town that serves as the gateway to the Serra da Canastra National Park, underwent a significant transformation. Tourism, once focused solely on the park's natural beauty, gained a new element: the mystery of Helena. The Helena Vieira Museum, inaugurated in 2011 in the town center, displays replicas of the equipment found in the cave, copies of the notebooks, and a detailed timeline of the case. It has become an essential stop for the more than 100,000 tourists who visit the region annually. Maria Conceição Santos, the former owner of the Serra Azul guest house where Helena stayed, transformed her establishment into the Hotel Enigma, with themed rooms dedicated to different aspects of the mystery. Room 7, where Helena lodged, is the most requested, often booked months in advance. People come from all over Brazil and even from abroad to stay in this room, says Maria Conceição, now 83. Some are curious onlookers, others are serious researchers, and then there are those who believe they can somehow feel what Helena felt. It's a fascinating phenomenon. From a scientific perspective, the case's most significant legacy is perhaps Project Kronos. This multidisciplinary initiative, established in 2010 by the National Council for Scientific and Technological Development, or CNPq, brings together physicists, geologists, neuroscientists, and psychologists to formally investigate the phenomena described in Helena and Victor's notes. What makes this project unique is its genuinely interdisciplinary approach, explains Dr. Carlos Mendes, a theoretical physicist and the project's coordinator. We are not just measuring magnetic anomalies or analyzing rock formations. We are also studying how such environments might affect human perception of time, cognition, and even physiological processes. Preliminary results from Project Kronos, published in 2020, suggest that prolonged exposure to the cave's anomalous magnetic field can indeed alter the subjective perception of time in humans. Volunteers who remained in the cave for 6 hours consistently estimated that only 4 to 4.5 hours had passed. Blood biomarker analyses of these volunteers also revealed subtle changes normally associated with longer periods of activity. These findings do not confirm a temporal anomaly in the physical sense, Dr. Mendes clarifies, but they do suggest a real neurobiological effect that could partially explain the experiences described by Helena and others who reported altered sensations of time in the region. For Gabriel Campos, the former scout whose discovery solved the mystery and who is now a geology professor at UFMG, Helena's case represents something deeper about the nature of science and human exploration. Helena was a scientific outsider, a psychologist investigating geophysical phenomena, and that likely gave her a unique perspective, free from the constraints of conventional thinking, Gabriel reflects. Ironically, that same freedom may have contributed to her death, as she wasn't fully aware of the risks she was taking. There's a powerful lesson there about the balance between scientific curiosity and methodological prudence. In 2023, an unexpected event added a new chapter to this already extraordinary story. An elderly Argentine man, identified as Miguel Stein, the nephew of Victor Stein, handed over a sealed package to Brazilian authorities. According to him, his uncle had left it with instructions to be opened only 30 years after his death. The package contained a detailed journal of Victor's earlier explorations in the Serra da Canastra, dated from 1980 to 1982, as well as correspondence with Helena that predated their fateful meeting. These letters revealed that the two had maintained a scientific collaboration for nearly a year before Helena's trip to the Serra. In one of the most revealing letters, dated May 1985, Victor wrote, "What we have discovered goes beyond simple magnetic anomalies. If my measurements are correct, we are facing what Einstein theoretically described as a closed time-like curve. A point where the fabric of space-time is sufficiently distorted to theoretically allow an observer to experience the same moment repeatedly. I am not suggesting time travel in the sense popularized by fiction, but something far more subtle and perhaps for that very reason more profound. These new documents, currently under expert analysis, promise to shed more light on the true intentions and discoveries of Helena and Victor. Meanwhile, the Serra da Canastra continues to guard its secrets, some of which may lie beyond our current understanding. The disappearance and discovery of Helena Marques Vieira is not just a solved police case or a partially explained scientific mystery. It is a powerful reminder of the limits of our knowledge and the courage of those who venture beyond the established frontiers, sometimes paying the ultimate price for their curiosity. As Helena herself wrote in her personal diary found in her hotel room on the eve of her disappearance, "The true unknown is not in the distant stars or the depths of the ocean, but in the interstitial spaces of the reality we assume we know so well. It is in the obscure corners of the familiar that the greatest mysteries lie hidden." Words that decades later continue to echo in the caves of the Serra da Canastra and the halls of contemporary science alike. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore other intriguing and revealing cases, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video. The truth may be elusive, but the search for it connects us all as human beings.